1.9 miles from where I'm standing right now. I counted. I graduated from high school. I graduated from the Ellis School. And it's my house today. So the world I entered in June of 1995, here's what it looked like from a technology front. There was a lot that was happening. There was a lot that was new. We weren't really sure how it was going to shape things over the years and decades to come, but we knew that there was something big happening. I got my first email address my freshman year of college, saw my first website my senior year of high school, and the summer after freshman year, I actually didn't check my email between June and September because there was no need. So I realize that makes me sound about 8,000 years old, but here's how the world looked outside of technology. The economy was in trouble. The job market was really challenging. We were mired in war in the Middle East. Is it starting to sound a little more familiar? So the world that I entered as a member of Generation X bears a lot of resemblance to the world that millennials are entering and shaping. The one difference is the speed and the rate of change in technology and how that's shaping the world around us has accelerated beyond our wildest dreams. So this is me now, and one more thing I want to call out. These are the last 3 jobs I've had. I'm at Facebook now. I've been there for just about 4 years. When I graduated from college, not only did not a single one of those companies exist, but the industries they're in didn't exist either. The job I have, the career I have, the life that I'm living was not imaginable those 7,030 days ago. My imagination wasn't big enough for it. So I want to talk about 3 things today. What does the world look like now? How are millennials navigating it? And what are some ways of thinking about working in a time of profound change? All right, so what does the world look like now? What's the landscape that millennials are entering and shaping? In many ways, we live in a world of more. There's more channels. There's more websites. There's more blogs. There's more information. There's more access. There's more sources. There's more data. The sheer tonnage of data that we have, that we're generating and that we have at our disposal now, has been growing by leaps and bounds. From the beginning of time until 2003, we generated 5 billion gigabytes of trackable data. We now generate that much data every 10 minutes. That's insane. There's no way to even conceive of that a few years ago, and digital is really what's shaping that. The storage capabilities that we have, the way that we can track things. So when we look at how information is being shared digitally, the rate of sharing is practically a vertical line. The amount of information that we're creating and sharing digitally has grown 9x in just 5 years. We're now generating multiple zettabytes of information every year, which sounds like a made-up number, but it's not. So how do you make sense out of this when there's so much to cull through? How do you find the signal within the noise? What's important? What's a trustworthy source? What do you question? What are the right questions to ask? How do you develop your own perspective and point of view? At the same time that we live in this world of more, many people are living in a world of less. Take education for a good example. Annual tuition at Stanford University, my alma mater, has risen 88% in the 15 years since I graduated. 88% in 15 years. And then as you're going through college, frequently to get a toehold in new industries, you need to be able to take an unpaid internship. Well, that only works if you can afford to forego a salary for a period of months. And that opportunity necessarily is only available to a select few. Income inequality is becoming more pronounced. Wage gap is growing. We're seeing frustrations about this play out in a lot of ways through protest, through demonstrations, through things like the Occupy movement of a few years ago. And on the world stage, we're seeing it in political unrest and the things that we see on the news every single day. So how do you navigate this when there is more coming at you all the time, but the break between the haves and the have-nots seems to be getting wider? I believe that technology has the ability and the promise to help bridge that gap if we work at it. Technology has the ability to shorten distances, to make the world smaller, to tighten connections. Relationships are built based on small, lightweight interactions over time. I'm closer with my family, who are spread from Rhode Island to Alaska, because I'm able to see on Facebook the ways that they're spending their days. I can see the picture of my cousin in Fort Collins of his kids going to the first day of school, and other friends, what they're doing, and having children, getting married. Not just the big life events, but the everyday events. And let's face it, there's a lot of people posting what they're having for dinner on Facebook, so that's happening too. But those moments, those little shared connections, help make distances collapse a little bit. And when I think about the developing world and what access to information makes possible, that's where this becomes really powerful. So what happens in the developing world when all of a sudden something as simple as an internet connection happens? All of a sudden there's democratization of information, there's more of a chance for political agency, for curiosity, for learning, being a more active participant in the global conversation. That's everything. That's how change happens, and I believe that it starts here. So how are millennials approaching this world? So social media is new. Facebook just turned 10 last February. This is a relatively new thing, but the impulse behind it is as old as humankind. This is a really basic impulse that we all share. It's the need to connect, to understand and be understood, to broaden your perspective, to understand what someone else is going through, what's their experience, how can I share my story? This goes back to telling stories around a campfire and painting images on cave walls. This is part of how we're wired. We just have different technology and plumbing that makes it possible. And really mobile is helping to drive this. That's the big acceleration. That's the difference between when I graduated from high school and what's happening now. We now hold in our hands what would have been considered very recently supercomputers. And they're with us all the time. Access to pretty much any information you would want to get a hold of. And mobile is not necessarily about avoiding an awkward dinner party, though sometimes it's about that. But really it's about connecting. I want to find out what's going on, what's happening in the world, what's happening with my friends, what's going on with my family. Here's what I'm doing. I will tell you, I've been posting like a mad woman today getting ready for this, because I've been so excited about this event. I want to share that with my friends and with my family, and I'm doing that through mobile. Something else that you hear about time and time again is the need for meaning that millennials has. This isn't just about every study and article I've come across, that there's a real need for a connection to a cause, to a purpose, that it's not just about, I'm going to punch a clock and do a job, but I need to have a reason behind what I'm doing and have a purpose-driven experience. Again, this is not a new impulse. I think everyone feels this way. I know I have. But the ways that we can help express it and scratch that itch and find that connection through technology become really interesting. So here's a few examples of how folks are doing that. This is a group called High School Hackers. It's a Facebook group. And last September, Avi Romanoff was getting ready to go to a hackathon in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania. Now, a hackathon is not about a bunch of guys in a basement trying to hack into the CIA. It is not what the movies make you think. Hacking and hackathons, they're about working on a problem, hacking away at it. Think of it in that kind of action. It's about working and optimizing what you're doing and iterating. So he was part of a group of 12 high schoolers who were going to this largely college-focused event. And so the day before the event, Avi created a Facebook group for the 12 of them, just so they could get to know each other, make a connection, and have conversations as the event went on, and then as they all went home. So that was a year ago. Those conversations, those relationships, have now blossomed into a group that has over 2,200 members in all 50 states, in 12 countries. This is a passionate group of young people who are having debates and conversations and making each other think about coding and programming and technology and ways that they can help push the future forward. And it's all happening through relationships and conversations that would not really be possible without technology. The Closebox Foundation in India is a really simple and elegant idea trying to solve for something in the charitable giving space. How do you make charitable giving efficient and transparent so that you know as a donor that what you're giving is going to the intended place? They were focused on getting clothes to people in need in some of India's poorest communities. So what they did was they put donation boxes in a few cities around India, and then made one simple additional ask of donors to please include their Facebook URL with their donation. So people do that, the clothes go to their intended recipients, and then the donor receives a photo back of their clothes being used by the people in those communities. Which does two things. One, it proves that yes, your donations are going exactly where you thought they were going and where you intended them. And it also creates an emotional connection when you see the people whose lives you're helping to affect. It takes something as large and seemingly unsolvable as poverty and and makes it something that you personally can affect. If only for one other person, you know that you've made a difference there. And that's just that one connection through making the world a little bit smaller. ALS has been in the news a lot lately. I know my newsfeed has been taken over with the Ice Bucket Challenge videos, as I'm sure is true for a lot of other folks here. But Hiro Fujita was working through his group End ALS to drive awareness for some years before that. ALS is a truly horrible disease. It robs you of the ability to walk, to talk, to eat, to move, and eventually to breathe, all the while leaving your mind completely present, trapped, unable to communicate. It is a hateful, horrible disease. And when Hiro received his diagnosis a couple of years ago, it was a devastating moment. But what he did through his frustration and need to connect and communicate was that he used the technology available to him, which is a fantastic eye scanning technology, where the computer can tell what row of letters he's looking at, and he can type that way. He's written a book, he's created a community, he's connected to people within the ALS community the world over who are sharing information that will be fundamentally vital to researchers as they work towards treatment and a cure. His community, End ALS, is really focused on two things. One is fundraising towards treatment and a cure, and the other is fundraising towards getting more people the kind of eye scanning technologies that he takes advantage of to be able to communicate with his family, with his friends, with other people who are suffering from this terrible disease. It takes what could be a very isolating moment and breaks down those walls. We're living through a time of really profound change, and getting comfortable with the concept of change is really important as you enter the workforce and think about what your path is going to look like. With only a couple of exceptions, my entire team at Facebook is made up of millennials. My CEO is a millennial. These are profoundly dedicated, passionate, whip-smart, super funny, wonderful people. They're focused on making the world more open and connected. They're focused on answering really interesting, challenging problems and solving them using technology. So if you'll permit me, there's a couple of things that I've learned from them, and hopefully a few that they've learned from me. The first is to be professionally curious. This is the number one thing I look for when I'm hiring. I can't teach it. I can't teach someone to want to learn, to be curious, to not want to be bored. But it's the number one thing that shows me that someone is going to be successful at Facebook. To enter into something with a hunger to learn more, to ask why, to ask how, but to do that with openness, with a respect for what's come before, but a hunger to push forward. I can't teach it, and I hire for it on the spot. The second is to have a philosophy of yes. This is the single best piece of advice my father ever gave me. The second best piece of advice he ever gave me was that if in the first week after taking a new job, you haven't utterly terrified yourself that you've bitten off more than you can chew, you haven't challenged yourself enough in taking it. But the best piece of advice he gave me was this, which was to say yes to things. Think back those 7,030 days to when I graduated from Ellis. This was unthinkable then. I've got a pretty big imagination. I couldn't have possibly imagined what this world looks like, what my life looks like, what my career looks like. That's happened because I've said yes to interesting conversations, to learning more, to taking a class, to going to a talk, to trying a new job, to do a speaking event, to learn from people around me, to go into things with a sense of openness and to start from there opens up possibility. Empathy is everything. This is the foundation of human relationships. This is the glue of human relationships. This is how you go from being internally focused to being service-oriented. How can you understand what other people are going through? What does that make possible for you when you start to broaden your perspective and think through what someone else's experience could be like? I'm a massive nerd, so I'm a big fan of the writer-director Joss Whedon's, and he's got a great quote that I love, that I will botch, but the gist of it is that in every interaction we have, we've got a fundamental choice. Do we want to connect, or do we want to divide? It really can be that simple. Connection can be a choice, and there's such power in it. So think about that. What becomes possible if every interaction you start with a sense of wanting to understand, to meet someone where they are, to connect, even in the challenging conversations, especially in the challenging conversations. I'm a people manager, and when I'm having a performance conversation, a tough one, with someone on my team, I want to enter that moment as fully present to connect with them as possible. If my walls are up, well, then nothing gets accomplished. We won't understand each other at all. Empathy, the need for connection, this is really, really critical. Your dreams are going to expand the universe of what's possible. Actually, that's only half the story. Your work is what's going to expand the universe of what's possible. Dreams are amazing, they're important, they're vital, but if they aren't followed with work, they don't happen. Work is what drives innovation. At Facebook, we have a culture of shipping products. So when something is ready to go, we say ship it. So we ship, we optimize, we iterate. And optimizing and iterating, that doesn't end. There's a gift in that we should always be learning, always be hungry. Keep hacking away at it. Try something new. Try it again, and again, and again. There's power in this. That's what drives innovation. I believe the moment that we're living in right now is a really profound leap forward in what is possible for people. The internet, the digital age, this is as fundamental a leap forward in what is possible as the invention of the printing press, as the Industrial Revolution, as the invention of the car, as flight. This is a profound step change in what is possible. And the chance to work on that and in it is a deep and resounding gift. The world that millennials are moving into and shaping is moving at a pace of change that we couldn't have possibly imagined, that I certainly didn't, but I'm richer for it. It's a more interesting, connected life because of it. So when you think through that step change of what the pace of change is going to drive, how technology is going to push things forward, if you enter that with connection at the core, with empathy, with openness, with positivity, and with work, it starts to look a little like magic. Thank you.